Linda Morris stared at the strange symbols dancing across her screen aboard the Stellar Pioneer. After 15 years of searching for alien life, the Deep Space Research Vessel had finally found something unusual near Alpha Centauri. She blinked hard, making sure she wasn't seeing things after another long shift. "Captain Wright, you need to see this," she called out, her voice steady despite her racing heart. The signal patterns were unlike anything she had ever seen before. Peter Wright walked over to her station, his boots making soft sounds against the metal floor. He leaned in close, squinting at the display. "What am I looking at, Dr. Morris?" "It's artificial, sir. These patterns are too regular to be natural. Someone built this." She pointed to the recurring sequences in the data. "And it's close, really close, just at the edge of the Alpha Centauri system." The captain straightened up, tugging at his uniform collar. "How did we miss this before? We've sent probes through this region." "We didn't miss it, sir. It wasn't here before. It just appeared." Linda pulled up the sensor logs from the past week. "See? Nothing. Nothing. Nothing." Then suddenly, there it is, like someone turned on a light. The bridge crew fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity had dreamed of this moment for centuries, but now that it was here, no one quite knew what to do. The decision was made for them when a soft chime echoed through the bridge. A new window opened on Linda's screen, filled with perfectly formed English text. "Greetings, Stellar Pioneer. Please maintain your current position. First contact protocols are now in effect." Captain Wright ordered the ship to hold position, though Linda could see his hands tightly gripping the back of her chair. Minutes stretched into hours as they waited, the crew alternating between excited whispers and tense silence. Their patience was rewarded when a ship materialized nearby, simply appeared out of nowhere, as if someone had peeled back a layer of space itself. It was beautiful, all flowing lines and subtle curves, more like a living thing than a vessel. Another message appeared. "We have been expecting you. Please prepare for visitors. We mean you no harm." The next few hours were a blur of activity as the crew prepared for their guests. Linda found herself in the ship's main conference room alongside Captain Wright and several other senior officers. When the aliens finally arrived, it wasn't anything like she had expected. They looked almost human, except for their slightly larger eyes and bluish skin tone. The leader introduced himself as Mentor Vax of the Galactic Council's observation post. "We have watched your species for a very long time," Vax explained, his voice carrying a slight musical quality. "You are unique among the spacefaring races we know." Linda leaned forward. "Unique how?" Vax's expression changed in a way that seemed almost sad. "Most species achieve space travel through centuries of careful cooperation and gradual advancement. But humans, you arose from conflict. You race forward, driven by competition and an endless drive to prove yourselves. It is both fascinating and frightening to the Council's members." Captain Wright shifted in his seat. "Are you saying the other species fear us?" "Yes," Vax replied simply. "But that is not necessarily a bad thing. The galaxy is changing, and we have begun to wonder if perhaps we need what humanity has. Your warrior's spirit, your ability to face conflict rather than flee from it." Linda felt a chill run down her spine as Vax continued. "We have chosen to reveal ourselves now because we face a choice, whether to isolate your species or embrace what you might become." Susan Baker had never seen anything like the Galactic Council headquarters. The massive space station hung in orbit around a pristine blue gas giant, its spiral arms stretching out like a silver flower in bloom. As her shuttle approached, she couldn't help but feel small. 2 weeks had passed since the Stellar Pioneer's discovery, and Earth had scrambled to select its first ambassador to the Council. Susan's background in conflict resolution had made her the top choice, though now she wondered if anyone could really be prepared for this. The docking procedure went smoothly, and she found herself walking through curved hallways alongside beings from across the galaxy. Some looked almost human, while others defied description. Her guide, A tall creature named Ceylon with silvery scales and 4 arms led her to the council chamber. "The full assembly awaits," Ceylon said, gesturing to the large doors ahead. "Try not to be alarmed by their directness. Many species here have not learned to soften their words." Susan nodded, straightened her jacket, and walked in. The chamber was arranged in concentric circles, with 17 different species represented. Their eyes, some glowing, some multifaceted, some barely visible, all turned to watch her. Jack Harrison, Earth's military advisor, was already there. He stood at a podium, his usual confident expression strained as he answered questions about Earth's military history. "So you intentionally practice warfare?" one of the council members asked, their crystalline form shimmering with what seemed like distress. "Even in times of peace. We call it training," Jack explained. "We maintain readiness because we've learned that peace must be protected." A ripple of uncomfortable movements passed through the assembly. Susan stepped forward, sensing the growing tension. "If I may address the council." The head speaker, a being of pure energy contained within a sophisticated environment suit, nodded. "Please, Ambassador Baker, help us understand." "I've spent the last few days studying the histories your people shared with us," Susan began. "I noticed something interesting. Nearly every species here evolved on worlds with abundant resources and relatively stable environments. Your societies grew through cooperation because that was the most logical path." She paused, making eye contact with as many council members as she could. Earth was different. Humans evolved facing constant challenges: climate shifts, resource scarcity, predators. We had to become adaptable. Yes, this led to conflict, but it also drove us to find new solutions, to innovate in ways we might not have otherwise. "But your species seems to seek out conflict," another council member noted. "Even your entertainment often centers around it." "We don't seek conflict," Susan corrected gently. "We prepare for it, because we've learned the hard way what happens when you don't. But look at how we've grown. Our most celebrated heroes are those who fight for peace, who protect others, who find ways to turn conflict into cooperation." Jack stepped in, his voice firm but respectful. "Humanity's warrior spirit doesn't mean we can't be peaceful. It means we're ready to defend that peace, and those who can't defend themselves." The head speaker's energy form pulsed thoughtfully, an interesting perspective. But it leads us to a difficult question. Can a species forged in conflict truly join a peaceful galactic society? Or would your inclusion eventually lead to the very problems you claim to be prepared for? Susan was about to respond when alarms began blaring throughout the station. The head speaker's form flickered with obvious distress as they received information through their neural link to the station's systems. "It seems," they said, their synthesized voice heavy with concern, "that we may need to table this discussion. We've just received word that something is approaching council space, something that has never responded to peaceful overtures." The chamber erupted in nervous discussion, and Susan caught Jack's eye. They both recognized the irony. They had come to convince the council that humanity's warrior nature wasn't a threat, and now they might have to prove it was actually an asset. Diana Cole stood at the massive observation window of the council station, watching the holographic display of the approaching threat. The Nexus ships moved in perfect formation, like a swarm of deadly insects. As the council's newly appointed human liaison, she had spent the last 3 days trying to help the alien species understand what they were facing. "They share a single mind," she explained to the gathered council members. "Every ship, every individual, all connected. That's why their movements are so coordinated." The Arcturian representative, a tall being with silvery skin, raised his long-fingered hand. "But surely that makes them peaceful. To be so connected, they must understand unity." Diana shook her head. "Unity doesn't always mean peace. The Nexus sees everything that isn't part of itself as a threat. They don't want to communicate. They want to absorb or destroy." The council chamber had changed in the past few days. The peaceful discussions about art and culture were replaced by worried whispers and fear. The Council's few military ships, designed mainly for show and ceremonial purposes, were no match for the approaching hive-mind fleet. Jack Harrison walked into the chamber, carrying data tablets filled with Earth's military history. The Council had finally asked to learn about human warfare, though many still seemed uncomfortable with the topic. The Nexus uses basic attack patterns, Jack explained, pointing to the tactical display. They rely on overwhelming numbers rather than strategy. This is actually good news. How can this be good? Asked a Vega Collective member, their crystalline form flickering with anxiety. Their fleet is 10 times the size of our defense force. Because basic patterns can be broken, Jack said. Humanity has fought against superior numbers before. We've learned to find weaknesses, to adapt, to outsmart stronger enemies. Diana moved to another display, showing the Nexus's path through the galaxy. They've already destroyed 3 civilizations that we know of. All peaceful, all highly advanced, all completely unprepared for real conflict. The head speaker's energy form pulsed with concern. What you suggest goes against everything the Council believes in. We have maintained peace for 10,000 years by avoiding warfare, not studying it. Sometimes the best way to preserve peace is to be ready to defend it, Diana said softly. She played a recording from one of the destroyed civilizations. The images of beautiful cities turned to ash made several Council members turn away. Susan Baker entered the chamber then, followed by Linda Morris from the Stellar Pioneer. They had been working with Council scientists to understand the Nexus better. We found something interesting, Linda announced. The Nexus hive mind has a weakness. Their unity is also their vulnerability. They can't understand or adapt to independent thought. They've never faced an enemy that acts unpredictably. The Council members looked at each other. Humans were nothing if not unpredictable. We're not asking you to become warriors, Susan added quickly. We're offering to help. Earth is ready to send ships, troops, and advisors. Let us show you how to defend yourselves. A young Rigel representative spoke up, their voice quiet but firm. Perhaps this is why we found humanity when we did. Not just to test you, but because we needed you. The head speaker's form brightened as they accessed more data about the approaching fleet. We have 2 weeks before the Nexus reaches our outer colonies. If we are to learn from humanity, we must begin now. Diana looked back at the tactical display, watching the red dots of the Nexus ships move closer. She knew that humanity's greatest test wasn't going to be proving they could fight. It would be proving they knew when to fight, and more importantly, what to fight for. Eric Phillips watched the alien ships move through space, their formations perfect and predictable. The Council's peacekeeping fleet had never faced real combat, and it showed. As commander of Earth's demonstration force, he had 1 week to change that. Your ships are faster than ours, he said to the assembled alien captains in the virtual training room. Your weapons are stronger, your shields are better, but none of that matters if you keep flying in straight lines. The alien commanders looked at each other nervously. Many of them had never even considered concepts like tactical maneuvering or combat strategy. Again, Eric ordered, resetting the simulation. This time, break your formation when the attack comes. Move unpredictably. Remember what we discussed about chaos theory in combat. The simulation started. Red dots representing enemy ships appeared on the massive display. This time, when the attack began, the Council ships scattered in different directions. It wasn't pretty, but it was better than their previous attempts. In the observation deck above, Jack Harrison stood with several Council members, watching the exercise. Your people learn quickly, he said, trying to sound encouraging. The Arcturian admiral's silver skin rippled with concern. It feels wrong. All this planning for violence. We're not planning for violence, Jack corrected. We're planning to protect your people. There's a difference. Below, Eric worked with a group of Vega Collective pilots, teaching them about evasive maneuvers. Their crystalline ships were beautiful but fragile. They needed to learn to dodge rather than absorb hits. Think of it like a dance, he explained, remembering how his first flight instructor had taught him. Space is your dance floor. Your ship is your partner. The enemy's attacks set the rhythm, but you choose the steps. The Vega pilots seemed to understand this metaphor better than traditional combat terminology. Their next run through the simulator showed marked improvement. Linda Morris entered the observation deck, carrying new data about the Nexus fleet. She handed a tablet to Jack, her expression serious. "They're moving faster than we predicted," she said quietly. "The Council's scientists think they've detected our preparations and are accelerating their approach." Jack studied the data, his jaw tightening. How long? 10 days, maybe less. Below, Eric was now running a full combat simulation. The Council ships moved with growing confidence, executing basic combat maneuvers. They weren't ready for real battle, but they were improving. A Rigel commander's ship successfully evaded a simulated attack while returning fire. The other aliens watched in fascination as the maneuver worked exactly as Eric had taught them. "You see," Eric said, his voice carrying pride. "You're natural pilots. You just needed to think differently about space combat." The simulation ended, and the scores appeared on the main display. It was their best performance yet, though still far from combat ready. Diana Cole entered the training room, her face showing a mix of concern and determination. "Commander Phillips, the Council requests your presence. They've received new intelligence about the Nexus that changes everything." Eric looked at his alien students, seeing the worry return to their faces. They had just started to believe they could learn to defend themselves. He couldn't let them lose that confidence now. "Whatever it is," he said firmly, "we'll adapt. That's what humans do best, and it's what we're teaching you to do too." As he followed Diana out, Eric heard the alien commanders beginning to discuss combat tactics among themselves, using terms they had learned from him. Maybe they weren't warriors by nature, but they were starting to understand that sometimes peace had to be protected by those willing to fight for it. Amy Gardner stared at the distress signal flashing on her ship's display. The Nexus had attacked the Council's outer colony on Rigel 7 3 days ahead of schedule. The colony's 12,000 inhabitants had barely started their evacuation. "Ma'am," her communications officer called out, "the Council is ordering all ships to maintain position. They say we're not ready yet." Amy drummed her fingers on her command chair. The Council ships weren't ready, true. But her ship, the Earth vessel Swift Strike, was built for this kind of fight. And those colonists wouldn't survive another hour without help. "Send a message to command," she said, straightening in her chair. "Tell them the Swift Strike is experiencing communication problems. We can't quite make out their orders." Her crew exchanged knowing looks. They all understood what she was doing. Technically disobeying orders while giving the Council a way to deny responsibility if things went wrong. "Plot a course to Rigel 7, Amy ordered. "And someone wake up our Rigel advisor. We'll need his knowledge of the colony's layout." The Swift Strike jumped into faster-than-light travel, its human-modified engines pushing the limits of Council technology. They dropped back into normal space near Rigel 7, and Amy felt her heart skip. 3 Nexus ships hung over the colony like dark clouds. "Status of the colony shields?" she asked. "Failing," her tactical officer reported. 10 minutes at most. Amy studied the Nexus ships. They were larger than her vessel, but she had something they didn't: imagination and the element of surprise. "Load the electromagnetic pulse warheads," she ordered. The weapons weren't deadly, but they could disrupt the Nexus's hive-mind connection. "Plot a slingshot course around the planet's moon." Her crew worked quickly, understanding her plan without needing it explained. The Swift Strike swung around the moon, using its gravity to add speed. They emerged from behind it spinning, their energy signature masked by the moon's natural radiation. The Nexus ships never saw them coming. Amy's tactical officer fired 3 EMP warheads simultaneously. The weapons detonated in perfect triangle formation around the Nexus ships. Cut off from their hive mind, The enemy vessels moved erratically, like bugs that had lost their colony's scent. "Launch rescue shuttles," Amy ordered. "Get those colonists out while the Nexus ships are confused." The next hour was organized chaos. Council evacuees poured into the Swift Strike's holds while the Nexus ships tried to restore their connection. Amy's crew worked alongside the Rigel advisor, using his knowledge to find hidden shelter locations they might have missed. When the last shuttle docked, Amy ordered an immediate retreat. They jumped away just as the Nexus ships began to recover. Back at the Council station, Amy stood before the emergency session, prepared to face punishment for disobeying orders. Instead, she found herself facing questions about her tactics. "You used our moon's radiation to hide your approach," a Vega commander asked, crystal form glowing with interest. "And these electromagnetic weapons," another council member added, "they caused no deaths." "The goal was to save lives," Amy explained. "Both the colonists and the Nexus ships survived. We just had to think creatively." The head speaker's energy form pulsed thoughtfully. "Perhaps we have been looking at human combat skills too narrowly. You chose to rescue rather than destroy. You found a way to succeed without major bloodshed. That's what humans do best," Amy said. "We don't just fight, we solve problems. Sometimes that means fighting, but it always means thinking beyond the obvious solution." Diana Cole, watching from the back of the chamber, smiled. The council was finally beginning to understand. Humanity's warrior nature wasn't just about combat skill. It was about the drive to face challenges head-on and find ways to overcome them. Ryan Martinez walked through the bustling halls of the Joint Training Center, watching humans and aliens work side by side. After Amy Gardner's successful rescue mission, everything had changed. The Council species now eagerly sought to learn from humanity, not just about fighting, but about adapting and innovating. "The crystal matrix in your ships," he explained to a group of Vega engineers, "it's not just for power. It could be used for instant communication during battle." He sketched a diagram on the holographic display, showing how human combat tactics could work with alien technology. The Vega engineers' crystalline forms sparkled with excitement as they understood. One of them quickly modified a ship's control system, combining their natural ability to channel energy with human-style tactical controls. In another part of the facility, Linda Morris worked with Council scientists to better understand the Nexus. "They think like one big mind," she said, pointing to their brainwave patterns. "But that's their weakness. They can't handle lots of different things happening at once." The Council's research team had grown to trust Linda over the past weeks. They no longer flinched when she talked about combat tactics, instead seeing how science and strategy could work together. Diana Cole entered the room, carrying news from the front lines. "The Nexus fleet has split into 3 groups," she announced. "They're attacking multiple colonies at once." Ryan looked up from his work. "They're learning. Trying to overwhelm us by dividing our forces." But instead of panic, he saw determination in the aliens' faces. A Rigel commander stepped forward, his blue skin glowing faintly. "Then we will adapt too. Show us how." The next few days were intense. Ryan helped combine human battle strategies with alien technology in ways neither side had imagined before. The Arcturians' natural telepathy became a new kind of battle network. The Vega's crystal ships were modified to change color and energy signatures, confusing Nexus sensors. In the main control room, Jack Harrison watched the tactical display with pride. The Council fleet no longer moved in rigid formations. Each ship now flew with purpose and creativity, using the strengths of their species in new ways. "We were wrong about humans," the head speaker said, their energy form pulsing steadily. "We thought your warrior nature meant you only knew how to destroy. But you've taught us to protect ourselves without losing who we are." Susan Baker, who had been coordinating with Earth for more support, joined them at the display. "Humans learned long ago that the best victories don't come from strength alone. They come from understanding your enemy, knowing your own strengths, and working together." Alerts sounded through the facility. The Nexus fleet had changed course again, all three groups now heading toward the Council's main worlds. But this time, no one panicked. Ryan watched as Council commanders calmly took their positions, coordinating with human advisors. Their ships, now modified with both human and alien innovations, moved into defensive positions. The Vega crystal ships shimmered with new power configurations. Arcturian vessels linked in telepathic networks, ready to share information faster than any computer. They think they're attacking 17 separate species, Ryan said, looking at the approaching Nexus fleet. Instead, they're about to face something new, a force that combines the best of all of us. In the background, more Earth ships arrived through the space gates, their crews already trained to work with alien technology. The Council species had learned that being peaceful didn't mean being helpless, and humanity had shown that being warriors didn't mean losing your compassion. Together, they had created something the Nexus could never understand, a community that could fight when needed, but never lost sight of what they were fighting for. Admiral Carol Bennett watched the massive fleet spread out before her. Human ships flew alongside crystalline Vega vessels, sleek Arcturian cruisers, and dozens of other Council ships. Each had been modified with both human and alien technology. They weren't just 17 different species anymore. They were one united force. Nexus fleet approaching. Her tactical officer reported. All three groups are converging on our position. Carol nodded calmly. Send the signal. Operation Chaos begins now. Across the fleet, ships began to move in patterns that would have seemed random to any observer. But this was controlled chaos, something humans had learned from studying nature itself. Like a flock of birds changing direction, each ship responded to its neighbors while following its own path. The Nexus ships arrived in perfect formation, their hive mind controlling every movement. They faced what looked like a disorganized crowd of vessels, scattered across space with no clear pattern. Now, Carol ordered. The trap was sprung. Vega ships suddenly changed their energy signatures, appearing to multiply on Nexus sensors. Arcturian vessels linked in telepathic networks, sharing targeting data faster than any computer. Human ships launched waves of the improved EMP weapons, disrupting the Nexus hive mind in dozens of places at once. Linda Morris, monitoring the battle from the Council station, watched the Nexus ships' reactions. They can't adapt fast enough, she reported. Their hive mind can't process so many different threats at once. The Nexus fleet tried to adjust, but every time they focused on one threat, three more appeared. Council ships using human tactics struck from unexpected angles. When the Nexus attempted to predict their movements, they found there was no pattern to predict. Second phase, Carol commanded. Susan Baker, watching from the Council chamber, held her breath as the plan she had helped develop went into action. Council ships began broadcasting a signal, not an attack, but an offer of peace, translated into the Nexus's own neural language. "We don't want to destroy you," the message said. "We want to show you a better way." The Nexus ships froze in space, their hive mind struggling to understand. They had never encountered a species that could defeat them, let alone one that would then offer peace. Jack Harrison's voice came over the comm. "Their neural patterns are changing. They're trying to understand." The battle paused as the Nexus processed this new experience. Their ships slowly reformed, but not in attack formation. For the first time in their history, the hive mind was considering something other than conquest. Hours later, in the Council chamber, Carol stood beside the head speaker as they formalized humanity's full membership in the Council. The Nexus had retreated, not in defeat, but with an agreement to communicate further. They had encountered something entirely new, a community that was stronger because of its differences, not in spite of them. "We feared your warrior nature," the head speaker admitted, their energy form glowing warmly. "We thought it meant you could only destroy. Instead, you taught us that true strength comes from facing challenges, not avoiding them. From protecting others, not just ourselves." Diana Cole stepped forward with the official treaty. Earth would lead the Council's new defense force. teaching other species not just how to fight, but when and why to fight, and more importantly, how to prevent fighting through strength and preparation. "You've changed us," a Vega representative said, their crystalline form shimmering. "But perhaps we've changed you too." Carol looked around the chamber, at humans and aliens working together as equals. "That's what humans do best," she said. "We adapt, we learn, we grow. And now we can do it together." The chamber erupted in celebration as the treaty was signed. The species that had once feared humanity's warrior nature now embraced it, understanding at last that sometimes the best guardians of peace are those who know how to fight for it.